these are NEF files, NEF. This is Nikon's RAW file. On other cameras, it might have it'll have a different ending, but look up, it needs to be in RAW format. Open with Photoshop, then it will bring up the camera RAW editor. So you can edit a lot more accurately. So first of all, the white balance is not too bad on these. I would take the white balance dropper and put it on the white area. You can do it in different areas. So let's say I do it here on the dark shadow. See, it's sort of not quite the right color, so you want to get it on a nice white bit. But these are already pretty good white balance, so it doesn't change it too much. And I like to slightly dehaze if you do the clarity a lot. So you just want to just a couple of tiny little adjustments. I might just pop the exposure up a tiny little bit. If you do it too much, it goes too bright. But so this is different than brightening in Photoshop. When you brighten in Photoshop, it adds white to the pixels, so it doesn't truly up the exposure, whereas your camera raw file has got lots of information from around on almost different exposure. So that is what it would look like if it was a lower exposure. So I'll just do a little bit. I'm looking at the colours of the beads to decide, and then so vibrance, that changes the vibrance of the colours. So I might do that a little bit. Sometimes cameras, because all of the white is around here, there's a lot of white. Cameras struggle with a lot of white, and it sort of confuses the camera sensor, so which is why it's really difficult to get photos of things on especially small things on a white background, as well as silver jewellery, because the camera gets confused basically. I don't think we need to adjust anything else. So I go on to this mask option. Select subject. This is pretty good. You used to have to do this by hand or using other selections, and it wasn't really very good, and that was it within Photoshop. This is within the camera raw bit. It works much better. So it creates a mask, but what we want to do is we want to invert the mask, because whatever is red will be what's changed. So I'm going to invert it. Let me get a little bit closer so you can subtract, and then see, it's just selected everything that's it's including the white in the mask, because it can't tell that bit of white is part of the object, or the subject as it calls it. I'm just gonna remove the mask from there, and then we'll add in and then this is where we can adjust these sliders. So we're trying to get the background lovely and white. So here you can toggle it on and off so that you can see the changes instead of it leaving the mask there. So you don't want to go overboard with it. You just want, so that's, go back and forth a bit much maybe. Doesn't need much. It's very difficult on tiny. The bigger the object, the easier it would be to photograph because there's more object in comparison to the white background. So I would just go through and do this on each one. And then I'd probably also, I like mine being square. I can use the arrow keys to move it side to side. What I don't do though here, I always leave it at the biggest. I don't go in like this yet because that blows up the whole image, which means you'll have a lower resolution. So what I do is I leave it here. So then once you've worked on all of these images, you select them all. I've only got one selected here, so it will just open one. So I'll open it. And then so what I will do so that it's not a tiny file, I will select probably Command and T brings up the transform box. Command T on a Mac, I think. I can't remember what it is on a Windows. But then I'll make it bigger this way so that the image size stays the same. I am just making that bit bigger. And then what I do, sometimes it's not quite as nice and white as I want. So I will use the brush tool, make sure it's on white, and usually I might either put the opacity down or the flow. Can't really figure out what the difference is, but usually the opacity, just so that it blends better. Make sure you've got the hardness on 0 so that there's no harsh lines, and then I use the square brackets as a shortcut to do the brush bigger and smaller, and then I'll paint over. Careful not to paint over your image, and because it's feathered at the edge, if you sort of go closer, actually no, it isn't, it's not too feathered, that's fine. I will paint just over here. Make sure you get the corners as well. And I'll go in and maybe just paint a little bit just to get any shadows that I don't like. So here, I love a nice crisp. Be careful of, oh, this is why it's another reason that's good to have the lower opacity, is so I like to lighten the shadows sometimes, but if you do 100% opacity, then it just looks weird. Whereas I could just go in and just manually lighten them up a little bit, and then I might do the same on some of the shadows in there. Sometimes shadows are good, sometimes to make it look real, but sometimes it looks a bit messy, so I'll just go over the shadows. And then, so that is the finished one, but that is what it looked like in comparison. And then I'll save it. These are actions over here on Photoshop. If you've never used actions before, they're amazing. So here I save all my jewellery just in the same folder, and it literally play. It's amazing. It's nice and quick. And there we go.